Every time I hear SCA, I'm like, isn't that a solved problem?
The first thing that needs to happen in our community is we need to stop discussing versions and we need to start discussing the actual risk. We are no longer in a position we can just keep on matching versions because we are exposed to an exponentially growing amount of versions in our code bases.
What are some of the blind spots people have that they do not realize?
One of our customers approached us and they're like, we've learned that 5 to 8% of their time is being spent on technical security issues, most of which come from SCA. We're quite literally spending 5 to 8% of our R&D organization time patching versions. Is this really the right way? There's an interesting question of what visibility and enforcement do you have to really answer the question of which of my application is using an older version of that internal developed library.
Has AI also opened the doors for more people to be AppSec people?
Our audience typically don't buy our AI model says this. That never flies. You need to be as cautious as you would basically in any other AI use case.
Application security has been spoken about for so long. And even today, now that AI is part of it, open source security has not been solved in this. And by that, what I mean, the traditional way of approaching whether your vulnerable library is present because you have validated that from a database, it's not the right way to approach SCA or software composition analysis, which is basically means that you're trying to identify, is there an open source library that I'm using which is vulnerable? We spoke about how enterprises use libraries today and how the proliferation of AI and the production of more code than ever, and where some of the blind spots are for people trying to wrap their heads around this particular problem of this a massive amount of code coming in, which is not just your Stack Overflow code, but basically vibe coded through the way. If you are someone who's looking at the application security intersection of AI, this is the episode for you. And if you know someone who's working on the same problem, definitely share the episode with them as well. As always, if you have been here for the second or third time, I would really appreciate if you take a quick second to hit the subscribe and follow button on Cloud Security Podcast if you are watching this on YouTube or LinkedIn or listening to this on Apple or Spotify. I really appreciate the support. I hope you enjoy this episode and I'll talk to you soon. Peace. Hello, welcome to another episode of Cloud Security Podcast. I've got Roy with me. Hey man, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Just to kind of set some context, could you share a bit about yourself, your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So Roy, born and raised in Israel. Like many Israeli founders, started my professional career with the technological unit of the IDF. Very quickly understood that I am not the most technical person in the room. That's one of these privileges that you get when you serve in these units.
Yeah.
Very quickly migrated from the security side, offensive, defensive, to the investing side for almost a decade.
All right.
And then at some point, the imposter syndrome kind of killed me, and I'm okay. Let's go back to building stuff that matters.
So you didn't want to miss out on the fun.
Exactly.
Fair.
I'm a masochist. Like at some point, I'll take my own target and get
fair.
it.
I mean, it's not a bad thing because you picked up the AppSec world as well. Actually, maybe a good point to start is seems like AI has disrupted everything. So how do you describe application security in 2025?
So I don't think the application security definition has changed at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are just additional cases that we need to cater for either with existing tools or with additional capabilities. So historically, or like 5 years ago, AppSec was the classic stack of SAST, SCA, container scanning, secret scanning, infrastructure as code.
Yeah.
And then a little bit of bug bounty, CI/CD security, etc. Now we kind of see these components getting more and more important because there's just enormous amount of code generated by additional bots and AI agents.
Yeah.
And in addition, you have to cater for specific cases of AI, whether it's incorporating AI in the code and what are the issues that come with that.
Yeah.
And also being able to just simply understand what AI components am I exposed to, what's the risk in that, etc.
Yeah.
So it's just an evolution of the same thing, amplifies the historical stack, but also introduces a new layer of AI-specific set of problems.
So what's different this time? I guess you pointed the evolution, because clearly it's, maybe 20 plus years of application security. Many people have gone through various iterations of it. We still talk about open source today, and we still talk about open source from the context of LLM models. We talk about open source from libraries being used in code. There's so many variations of it as well. How has that open source kind of world evolved in AppSec specifically?
So that's a very good question because the open source security side has mostly been relying on open source vulnerability databases, the NVDs, the OSV.dev, the GHSAs, whatever. Yeah. And now, if you're specifically asking about how AI is affecting this, So it just amplifies a problem with the existing ones that we have. We can discuss that later. Just the level of noise, lack of evidence, actionability, developer pushback, all the stuff that we've been kind of seeing for quite some time.
Yeah.
And in addition, there's this question of now I have open source packages, but also AI models. Who maps the risks in models? How do I inventory which models am I exposed to? What are the known and unknown risks in each model? What is the remediation path for so for an open source package? We know what do I do if I have an AI related risk?
Yeah.
So this is kind of how we see this transitioning to AI specific. Somebody needs to now map the risk of what are the known and unknown risks of using AI in the software development processes. What's the ground truth? Where do I get the data from? And then how do I find this in my stack?
So a lot of people may already have, and maybe it's the fault of being marketed AppSec for so long. And yeah, I'm probably in that category as well. Every time I hear SCA, I'm like, isn't that a solved problem? Like, I know that, hey, to your point, I match it. Someone is matching it to a database, of trying to tell information about libraries. And is that, so why is it different in the world of AI? Because if it's the same code being used and otherwise, why is it the same?
So there are multiple differences. The first one is we live that pain of the sentiment that SCA has been commoditized. And for the vast majority, in full transparency, it has been commoditized. We see very, very advanced accounts that quite literally tell us, why would I pay a premium for a commercial product with 6-7 figures a year?
Yeah.
Where my team is technically savvy enough to take the open source projects, run them internally, and build that system in a very cost-effective way.
Yeah.
So how does AI generally affect it, or what's the problem is, the main problem is that we have a data availability issue problem with the data that is available about open source risks today to begin with.
Oh, okay.
A decade ago, when we've kind of added open source vulnerabilities to the NVDs of the world, we chose the same pattern of granularity of data, the structure, the format. We're used to flagging risk on open source packages by a very simple process called version matching. Okay. Maybe in addition, you have an unstructured textual description, but essentially it doesn't really matter your vulnerability of choice, whether that's NVD, OSV, Dev, GHSA, and the commercial ones. We are structurally looking for versions. And the first thing that AI did is amplify the problem with that method. We are no longer in a position we can just keep on matching versions because we are exposed to an exponentially growing amount of versions in our code bases.
I was going to say, because I think because there's obviously different kinds of open source as well. There's like the nested version. There is the, hey, what I can see by the name of a presence. So does that need to change as well in terms of it's not just about whether, I don't know, my really bad library.js file is in a repository somewhere and it's apparently in an NVD file somewhere that, hey, it's vulnerable. So that's kind of where most knowledge of AppSec kind of stops with SCA.
Exactly. So the thing is, if and I hate this example because it's a boring one, but
I mean, you can give me a better example. Go for it.
No. It's just common enough so people kind of relate. If you take the log4j library as an example, it's 60,000 lines of code.
Right.
These 60,000 lines of code are exposing 7,000 functions. Ballpark, okay?
Yeah.
The vulnerability itself is in the lookup function within the JNDI manager class within the log4j core. Right? You could find that information. You can read fixed commit. You can compare the version that is fixed to the vulnerable version. You can read exploit examples. You can read blog posts.
Yeah.
But the vulnerability database does not structurally tell us where exactly, again, across all of the open source vulnerabilities. So the first thing that needs to happen in our community is we need to stop discussing versions and we need to start discussing the actual exploit or actual risk from every package. And AI is very powerful and has a lot of promise in kind of helping us build that knowledge base to map everything retroactively, but also future looking. We have seen some advancement. So some of the Go ecosystem, for example, is already richer in context. That some of the disclosure are pinpointing specific functions, but generally speaking, this is not where we are right now. So that's like one big problem with data that is available. In theory, it's out there, but we don't structurally share it because historically, we didn't want to help the attackers, right? We didn't want to tell them, hey, here's the line of code, here's the function, please do this to just hack this.
So that's changed now.
we see like the Go database is an example,
Yeah.
and we are building that knowledge base internally. So that's one of the things that we're doing with Hopper is we're leveraging on our vulnerability research background from the Army and AI availability to kind of streamline and automate vulnerability research at scale to build that knowledge base of which functions are actually impacting every CVE in the world to be able to really pinpoint risks at a much granular way. That's one element that we see.
So when you say pinpoint vulnerability, because I think most people can think of open source SCA and go, is that the same as the file being there, or is it the reachability of it? When you say context, what do you refer to as, I guess?
So I'll try and avoid the term reachability, although
Okay.
we use it as well. And I'll explain why, because reachability is a broad term that could be used in many different ways. I think James Bertholli had a great,
Yes, he did.
5 types, probably there are like 10 types of different reachability. You have package level, function level, runtime, internet facing,
Yeah.
like so many different types. And basically what we do is we say, let's first understand what the real issue is and where it resides within the package.
Yeah.
And is there even a remotely theoretical way that the application logic would get to that flow? You can later build on additional layers of prioritization.
Yeah.
What is the actual flow in runtime? What are the compensating controls that I have? Can I add compensating controls, et cetera, et cetera? But at the very, very basic, we're shifting the method of risk analysis from package version basis to where exactly is the function, method, line of code, and the way I have architected my application, the APIs that I'm using, the function calls that I'm triggering, the logic that I've deployed, is it potentially remotely exposing me to that vulnerable part? And what we've seen is that essentially that makes sense because almost by design, you're increasing the resolution of the scan by an order of magnitude. So it doesn't ask you to do much. It's still the same, read-only experience, no agent, no runtime, no CI/CD steps, nothing heavy.
Yeah.
You're just getting higher fidelity results that off the bat eliminate over 90 to 95% of the noise.
Interesting. And interesting that you didn't want to use the word reachability as well, because I find that a lot of people kind of link to it because and to what you said, the examples are quite complex sometimes. And you gave a good example as well there. Do you find that with open source libraries and pulling them into an API world, is there a misconception or blind spot that today AppSec people have about this particular industry? And obviously, it could be the fact that 25 years or 20 plus years of just doing AppSec has made us very much attuned to a certain kind of SCA. And you're saying it's like, that's probably not the right way moving forward. So for people who are trying to understand, get their head around this, whether it's through AI or not through AI, what do you see is the change, or what do you see are the blind spots that people who are still using the legacy way of doing it? And maybe legacy is a loose term for it, but the previous versions of
it's been 20 years. You have legacy and you have semi-modern and you have modern as well. We have competition as well. So it's.
Oh yeah, there you go. So I wonder what are some of the blind spots, because people are clearly at different stages of that. Like some people may have used a legacy application, they still continue to do that because they have a contract or whatever. And some may use semi-modern, some may use. So where do you find is that in each one of those scenarios, the blind spot people have that they do not realize, hey, I'm a little behind the 8 ball if I'm sticking with the legacy version. I need to be either semi-modern or modern.
So I think it kind of starts from what are you trying to achieve? The security leaders tend to always stick with like people, process, technology.
Yeah.
The technology should serve the process.
Yeah.
We've seen companies that have the appetite and the capability and regulatory requirements to just patch everything. They still exist.
Yeah.
Recently, we've been fortunate enough that even FedRAMP, I don't know if you followed the recent RFC, but even the most rigorous regulation body is kind of getting to that stage of acknowledgement where we can't keep on patching everything. That's not feasible enough. But we have seen that segment. It's not huge, but I've actually recently written a little bit of a rant on LinkedIn about that. But what I'm getting at is, the question is, what are you trying to achieve? What's your process? What's your policy? Are you trying to reduce risk? Are you trying to, how mindful are you to the engineering velocity? What are their regulatory requirements? What do your customers want and demand? And the main blind spot that we see now with customers is that knowledge of, am I actually reducing risk by patching more? How do I know if what I am patching is the right thing to patch? And another interesting thing is we see more and more security leaders getting at the board level. So they're now more of a business enabler. They have to do a lot with a lot more with less.
Yeah.
They've been elevated to be a business enabler.
Yeah.
And we see more and more of them being kind of part of the discussion of what is the burden that we are putting on our engineering organization, and are we actually getting value out of all of that? You want to call it taxation, technical debt, security debt, it doesn't really matter. But am I, as a company, it's my job as a C-level with a company to make sure that we take that very expensive, precious resource called our R&D organization,
Yeah.
typically very expensive talent.
Yeah.
And are we really utilizing it in an effective way? Or are we just throwing them a pile of tickets that we have zero visibility into the value that fixing them would deliver to the business?
And talking about business deliverables, I guess cost and financial outcomes has always been used as a way to either get a security product or probably help the board understand why it's important. Has that changed as well in this world now, in terms of the cost associated with the potential breach because of open source?
So I think the cost, what we see in terms of cost, and this is like an education phase that we see in the market. I think they're getting a lot more aware that the cost is not just the cost of the SKU or the line item in the budget. There is a total cost of ownership element, because you can buy a tool, but then you need your team to spend time on that, spending whatever amount of hours.
Yeah.
And then if you're really, a business enabler, then you need to be mindful of what is that taxation element that you're putting on the engineering organization. So just to give you just one example of a very extreme level of cost that we've seen, one of our customers approached us and they're like, you know what? We've surveyed our engineering organization.
Okay.
And we've learned that 5 to 8% of their time is being spent on technical security issues, most of which come from SCA because, we're highly regulated. So we're quite literally spending 5 to 8% of our R&D organization time patching versions. Is this really the right way? Is there a way to take that precious resource that is there to deliver value, to generate revenue, to build products, to release features, to provide uptime, to improve customer experience? And can we do this in a bit of a different way to actually deliver more with what we have? Because if we keep on going, in a year or two, we'll be at the 15% mark. And then in 5 years, we'll be at 20, 25% mark. And you know what? Like, I love open source, man, but I'm not in the business of maintaining it.
Yeah, fair. So wait, what do people do today then? I guess obviously you guys are working towards challenging the norm, which has been the norm for a long time. What are people doing in the legacy world for internal libraries and otherwise? What's been the path, and what's been the path for them to triage this?
So what do you refer to as internal libraries?
As in like the internal open source library. So every organization would have like hey, we use a library, which is, let's just say a bank. Internet banking, I have my own special libraries that I use for Ashish to log in into his bank account. So that's how I know that, yes, it's Ashish, blah, blah, blah. And that's the same library used across the organization. And that's usually where, at least in the DevSecOps program that I ran, we found that, or a lot of the libraries that we were creating for us internally, they had a lot of open source libraries that we were using. And we found that some of them had the right license, some of them did not have the right license. And I can go in the whole rabbit hole with that. But anyway, long story short, I failed that program miserably. I didn't lose my job.
But you've learned.
Yeah, I learned. But I definitely found that our approach to open source library was a lot more. What are people doing about that? Because I don't want to answer the question, but I almost feel like I'm curious. What are you finding that when you walk into a conversation with a potential customer or prospect, what are they doing today?
Okay, now I understand the question, and I have a very interesting story for you. So the larger accounts, we typically see them heavily relying on these internal software artifacts to store reproducible internal developed libraries. Typically, that would be the Azure DevOps or JFrog Artifactory or something. Next, so it's like where you store these internal. Typically, they would be like com.acme.logging, com.acme.crypto, security, messaging, analytics, etc. And we've identified, back to the blind spot case. So in one case, we've seen a critical, reachable, on the function level text for shell. And we're like, how did this happen? And what we've identified is an interesting blind spot. Because you ask, how are things operating today?
Yeah.
So let's say you have one of these classic SCA that is a manifest level scanner.
Yeah.
So the repo would be clean. Your platform team does an amazing job. They patch everything.
Yeah.
They bump it. It's great. That internal library repo is well maintained.
Yeah.
And they've published it to that internal artifact storing system. And you would see an updated artifact in that artifact storing, JFrog Artifactory, let's say. And even if you scan the Artifactory, you would see, I have a clean version.
Yeah.
Now there's an interesting question of what visibility and enforcement do you have to really answer the question of which of my application is using an older version of that internal developed library, still proliferating risk to the application layer? Because you know what? I've failed to see a single organization that says, delete the older versions from the artifact. Not a single one.
Yeah.
Let's see what breaks and then they'll call us. You know, not a single time.
No.
And part of the interesting thing is, being able to actually understand how an application is being built, what are the components, how code is being bundled into internal libraries and applications and services.
Yeah.
And that the whole world of internal dependencies and interdependencies is something that we've learned that we need to cover very, very quickly, because otherwise it's a huge blind spot. Yeah. Although, we're talking about reducing the amount of noise in the category.
Yeah.
It's not an easy discussion with a customer to tell but you also have a million more.
Actually, because to your point, their focus is the latest version of the library, not the older versions.
Yeah.
Because to your point, when we talk about patching, we're like, I'm using the latest version of OS. But what does that mean from a library perspective? Because the person probably did the version 1 of it left ages ago as well. So you don't even know what to do there.
Yep. But in theory, you would have expected the internal library use cases to be the easiest patch. You have an internal library that the team has published.
Yeah.
You just need to ask the application team to move to, com.acme.crypto, from 2.0.5 to 3.2.1.
Yeah.
But they also know that they need to see what's going to break and, what's my motivation to fix it. And that's kind of that blind spot that we see quite commonly around that. And the issue with it is where that meets some of our customers is that if you scan on the runtime side, you may actually be able to see that you're using a vulnerable version of a library. But then no matter where you look, you're like, it's a phantom one. If you do like dependency tree that doesn't analyze that internal dependency from the artifact, everything would look clean. Like the repo is clean, the artifactory is clean, and triaging this becomes a very, very big pain.
Yeah.
So being able to pinpoint not just the function and the source code, but also which vulnerability originates from where. Is also a very interesting ask that we've learned from our customers.
Interesting, man. Because I definitely find. Wait, so does that mean the way people approach application security programs, should that change as well then? At least the SCA component of it.
I think that, again, when you build your AppSec program, you need to kind of prioritize. And we see like the classic 4 pillars that we've discussed.
Yeah.
But I do feel like you need to really understand that if you're now going to incorporate the classic basic legacy tools, that would probably charge a lot of toil and false positives on your organization. And we do see modern customers kind of heavily relying on risk-based SCA. It could be, again, depending on what they need, their tech stack, their business, how they deploy software, et cetera, et cetera.
But with the context as well for whether this is in use and where the function is used.
Absolutely. But basically, the whole category is going down that path. Very small portion of the customers that we see also have like a runtime component, although it's covering a little less.
Yeah.
But every single customer we speak with, at some point in the renewal, like this has to be part of the SAs.
So another term that's been popular in the AppSec world is the whole wipe coding thing as well.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. So what's your take on it? Some people believe it would not take off. I definitely am. I've got my own thoughts on this, but what's your take on this, and what do you see as how it would impact the SCA world specifically?
I have failed to see a single instance in history where fighting and technology resulted in that technology not proliferating. I'm a huge believer of, AI, agentic AI, and vibe coding is just basically saying, now more people could develop or developers could
Yeah.
develop much
Yeah.
faster. And, so I do feel we're going to see a lot more code written by a lot more people.
Yeah. Potentially not developers either as well.
Not every single one of them is going to be a developer. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And also junior developers are just going to generate a lot more code because, we just need to have a basic understanding.
Yeah.
And what we see is that would probably just keep on challenging that paradigm of how we run risk analysis today. If we can't already keep up, then the question is, how are we doing things a bit different to prepare for the scale and the amount of code that these vibe coding people and tools are going to generate? And also, in addition, that means that we're probably going to, similarly to the shift left approach, which in all honesty, we are huge believers of, but I don't think it took off that widespread.
Okay.
It's a mentality thing. Shift left would actually happen when you motivate developers to generate more secure code. And most of my friends, and my wife, by the way, is a software engineer.
Yeah.
Not they're not, the compensation and performance has zero to do with the security of the code they ship.
That's right.
Not a single one.
Yeah.
Shift left is a general mentality that is right because it's much more cost effective to solve issues early on.
Yeah.
But it'll actually hit critical mass when developers are incentivized to generate more secure code. Specifically for vibe coding, I do think we have a huge opportunity to kind of incorporate more and more security-aware capabilities to the modern developer lifecycle, whether that's via MCP servers, which great shirt, by the way.
Thank you.
Or the classic IDE plugins, or the classic flow of empowering developers is just going to be even more important now than ever.
Yeah.
Because they're not really aware and they're not really care about security. They care about releasing features. They have the requirements they need to fulfill.
Yeah.
And they just ship software. That's what they do.
It's funny. I think I feel one of the reasons why my DevSecOps program failed was kind of like that as well, because there was no true compensation for a developer to even care. Like, I did not build a security champions program. There was none of that stuff to even consider the fact that, hey, why would there be a motivation for a developer to solve it? Apart from my naive security brain thinking, well, everyone clearly wants to remove vulnerability. Why would they not want? I mean, it sounds like a stupid idea. You work for a company, they pay you to make good software. You make good software, but you also make sure it's secure as well. So vulnerability should be solved everywhere. Anyway, a very naive way of thinking, but do you find that now people are vibe coding, have MCP servers pretty prevalent as well? How is the whole MCP server impacting this kind of? Is there an impact of that as well in this, like in terms of how people are developing and what risk it exposes people to?
So yeah, first of all, there are like AI and now MCP specific questions.
This is, for me, it's more around like the coding part of it rather than the MCP server part of it.
But the more you rely on different MCP servers and coding edge, for example, the more you're prone to hallucinating packages and generating insecure code by almost by design.
Yeah.
So that element is very, very critical, and we see that proliferating very, very quickly to pretty much every account. And as you probably know, there already has been multiple attacks, and attackers are kind of, let me try and pinpoint what is the most likely package to be hallucinated so I can kind of register it.
Yeah.
So the more we use these tools and the more access we provide different platforms and tools to our source code via these MCP servers, the more our codes become bloated and the less control we have into what we are actually generating.
Yeah.
And that just calls for more guardrails at the coding level, but also even after you just build it, where you store it at the repo. The repo is going to have a lot more code that a lot less people reviewed and actually wrote.
Yeah. So do you actually feel it would be an overwhelming amount of code coming out for developers to review, which also means that there's a lot of open source libraries that would be included that may be real, maybe just an AI hallucination as well. So are you seeing, have you seen that as a real case that's happening across the board for people to be more inclining towards, hey, there is a pattern in the industry where it's not just me, the developer, producing code using Stack Overflow, copy-paste, Now I'm using Copilot to produce my code or Cursor or whatever other coding tool that I have to wipe code my way. I'm building internal libraries that are potentially being used to what you said, but to upgrade my version because my security team has been on my back for a while. Are you seeing a lot of AppSec teams adopting a lot of AI themselves as well?
I think they're still at the experimental phase.
Okay.
And then some of the issues are widespread and some are not. I don't think hallucinated packages are that common yet.
Okay.
It's like an edge case that we start learning about.
Yeah.
But what we are seeing AppSec programs trying to heavily leverage on AI and how can we leverage that to kind of streamline the process, because we're going to have to support a lot more code.
Yeah.
And we're not getting more budget for this.
Yeah.
We're not going to increase our headcount by 5x.
Yeah.
But the amount of code that our team is going to generate is going to grow exponentially.
Yeah. Do you feel like has AI also opened the doors for more people to be AppSec people? And the reason I say that is because I started in IAM, did infrastructure, but I was never a AppSec coder. And I always used to think that, oh, maybe my DevSecOps program would have been better if I had an AppSec person in the team. But the saying seems to be that with AI, a cloud person could also become an AppSec person. A red team person could become an AppSec person if they want to as well. The skills should be transferable. And where I'm going with this is that CISOs obviously are making a choice for, hey, I understand that the open source libraries, it's not just about being present, but it's also, is it reachable? Is it accessible? Where it's being used or not? Well, how do you see this impacting the teams that are being created for AppSec? With the new way of how AppSec is being done, should the team be different as well? Or the current team kind of caters for AI world as well?
So I think very few teams really understand the intrinsic challenges that AI specific things bring in. But what we do see is they have to kind of very quickly keep up and learn what that risk means. I'm not a huge fan of just throwing the whole team on everything, although we do see some teams bring that approach to the table.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's AppSec specific. I have met multiple teams where, and you've probably come across these, we're all security engineers.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a romantic approach because it has merits to it, because we all need to understand the whole stack.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, you know, essentially the code that we build is shipped to an environment and is behind a network firewall, for example. You know?
Yeah. And
so somebody needs that end-to-end contextual analysis, but it's not very common and it's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
I do think AI is very good at quickly educating our team members about what everybody's doing, what does the day-to-day look like, what are the general risks that everybody's having to deal with. But it's not going to replace deep understanding and deep problems. And one of the fun, I'll give you a very interesting experiences from an internal process we had. We've basically built an infrastructure that we took a vulnerability researcher, a human that has been doing this for like 20 years in the army, very capable of uncovering 0 days, whatever, and then put AI in their hands, and see how quickly they can triage a vulnerability and understand, again, the function, et cetera, et cetera. And we've compared that to just asking a question to a model.
Yeah, okay.
You are not yet in a position, or unfortunately for us, we're not yet in a position where we can just throw a question at a model like, hey, tell me, what's the vulnerable function? Like, this has a lot of issues. And not only models are not yet capable of fully triaging and automating, they'll get there. I'm not saying they're not, but the issue with it is that there is an AppSec specific thing, which is we have a technical audience, typically a software engineer, that likes deterministic findings that are reproducible, that are evidence-based.
Yep.
Our audience typically don't buy our AI model says this. That never flies.
Yeah.
So we see a lot of potential in augmenting human using AI.
Yeah.
But you need to be as cautious as you would basically in any other AI use case.
So for people who are trying to, like CISOs or AppSec leaders who are trying to make a call for whether they're uplifting their AppSec program for AI or they're looking ahead, how can they separate the signal from the noise today in this 2025 version of AppSec? So
again, the first thing they need to do is they need to come up with a program that suits their business.
Yeah.
And really understand that there is a modern way of identifying risk.
Mhm.
Risk is just no longer inventorying of theoretical vulnerabilities in a code base, but what is actually potentially affecting me? What is the business criticality of this? What's the blast radius of this, etc. And they also need to understand that there is a huge wave of code coming our way that humans have very little understanding of. Historically, we had to have full ownership of every line of code because somebody wrote it, and then another person typically did the code review.
Yeah.
These days, we see debug and triage time that is manually getting extended more and more because the developers are less aware of the internal decisions and the architectural decisions and why are things there.
Yeah.
So I do feel like CISOs have to kind of take into account that the issues that we're seeing now already are going to be augmented 10, 20, 100 times over the next 2 to 3 years with the adoption of AI.
Yeah.
So we need to find the right tools to empower our teams, automate triaging and investigation, find the balance between AI everything to deterministic and what our engineers can actually digest and work with. Be even more mindful of the tax that we're going to put on our development organization because essentially we're here to make money, not patch software.
Yeah.
And really find that balance between getting ready for the AI revolution, uplifting our tool stack and staff to kind of prepare for what's coming.
Yeah.
But still balancing enabling the business and not like panic and just block everything.
Because you came from a VC world as well. We were talking about this before we started recording, the whole best of breed versus one platform rules them all. There's so many variations of it as well. How do you see the AppSec space for that particular thing in terms of best? Is that still relevant today in the AI world? If you were to put your VC hat back on?
So I think it's more relevant than ever, but it's more of an ICP market segmentation standpoint. There will always be the subset of the market that needs a best of suite.
Yeah.
The thing is that if you look at the category as big as AppSec, tens of billions of dollars have been invested in that over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
SAST, SCA, secret scanning, infrastructure as code, container scanning, bug bounty program, CI/CD security. If you really think your vendor is going to deliver the 80-20 on each component, then you're probably hallucinating. but you just need to understand the trade-offs, okay?
Yeah.
If you just need your bases covered, you're ticking the box, the main motivation is compliance, and you're okay with like a subpar, but I need everything immediately today.
Yeah.
Then I honestly believe that best of suite could be the right decision for you. Nonetheless, that comes at a higher and higher tax rate every day. Okay,
Yeah.
like especially in the key components.
Yeah.
SCA, container scanning, SAST, etc.
Yeah.
Where we do see the market maturing is that, and we also see the industry opening up, is that even the best of suite platforms are opening more and more connectors. Kind of what we see with the ASPM category.
Yeah.
Because wide platforms understand their customer needs.
Yeah.
And they're trying to be a little less opinionated unless they have to, where you can plug your own scanner if you think it's much better than ours.
Interesting. I guess to your point, it's about all the context you can get to make the right call for the vulnerability in front of you.
Yeah, and then obviously the reason that we think there's a huge opportunity here is that we're not optimizing a small portion of the AppSec program.
Yeah.
We're actually, and we've been by now baked off against pretty much every vendor in the category. We're happy to just bake us off against anyone. You play with it for a week, call us back. You're not optimizing by a margin. We fully understand that to introduce the best of breed tool to such a category that is already noisy for the many times in this in conversation, the value has to be an order of magnitude more, 20 times more.
Just to stand out,
just to justify a switch. It wouldn't make sense for us to come to you and say, you know what, we are 20 times better than your off-the-shelf, open source project wrapped or like classic SCA. It doesn't make sense to you.
No.
But if you're optimizing the vast majority of your AppSec program with a tool that is quite literally 20, 25 times more accurate, and your engineers actually take action on, this is where the value that we see. And from an investor and a founder's perspective, I do think that it's a little naive that founders think that, I'm going to take 10, 20 million in capital injection and I'm going to take on the whole AppSec category. Like Wiz did it, but that requires in the cloud security market. But that requires second timers, endless amount of capital, the best of everything.
Yeah.
I think the startup opportunity is to kind of becoming industry experts in the most painful problems of our customers, solving them 20, 30 times better than anyone else, and try and be focused on a strategy that would make sense for a startup company
Yeah.
that is typically not a best of suite.
Interesting. Yeah, I love the perspective, man. Those are the technical questions I had. I've got 3 fun questions for you as well.
Okay. I'm not a fun person.
Well, we'll find out. What is something that you spend time on when you're not trying to solve the AppSec problems of the world?
Family.
Oh, perfect. Wow, you're like one line sharp answers. I thought you're not fun.
No, family. But basically, the way I see it is I have the places where I enjoy what I do, but I have the place where I exhaust energy.
Yeah.
And I have the places where I recharge.
Fair.
Family is where I recharge.
That's awesome. And maybe it's a related question as well. Second one, what is something that you're proud of that is not on your social media?
It's a weird one, but I am very proud of the group of friends that I've been carrying around for the last, almost 4 years of my life. I have a few from kindergarten, a few from, elementary school, all the way to the army. And I think sticking to great random people you meet along the way is an underestimated skill.
Yeah.
And we try and implement that in the company culture. We're very selective into who we bring in.
Yeah.
But haven't had churn. And you know how looked after great security engineers and reverse engineer and software development.
So they have a lot of options as well to go to. Yeah.
They choose us every day. They can easily make more money. They can easily, sticking to the right people is kind of what I think my LinkedIn profile would not highlight.
Awesome. And final question, what is your favorite cuisine or restaurant you can share with us?
I'm Italian. My mother's Italian. It's not the healthiest one. But my favorite cuisine is home again.
Oh, fair, yes.
But Italian, lasagna, pasta, the unhealthy stuff, that recharges the fun part of
It's all comfort food. I think that's how I describe it.
Yeah, it's comforting. So for me, comforting is Italian.
Yeah, perfect. And where can people learn more about what Hopper Security is doing and what you guys are working on?
So basically, we have the website like most companies do. It's hopper.security. I'm more than happy to kind of, we're still young and ambitious enough. I actually want to get to know people who want to get to know us.
Yeah.
So I just encourage a direct conversation. We're not, that distance. Hit us up directly on LinkedIn, Roy Gottlieb. If you're into the more technical stuff, we'll pull in our CTO. We're still very much in that evangelizing, and we want to solve this problem for the world. Whether we're the right fit for you or not, we're always here to kind of offer an advice of what we see in the market.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Thank you for sharing that. And I'll put that in the links as well. But thank you for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. That's been great.
Yeah, likewise, man. And thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for listening and watching this episode of Cloud Security Podcast. If you've been enjoying content like this, you can find more episodes like these on www.cloudsecuritypodcast.tv. We are also publishing these episodes on social media as well, so you can definitely find these episodes there. Oh, by the way, just in case there was interest in learning about AI cybersecurity, we also have a sister podcast called AI Cybersecurity Podcast, which may be of interest as well. I'll leave the links in the description for you to check them out. And also for our weekly newsletter, where we do in-depth analysis of different topics within cloud security, ranging from identity, endpoint, all the way up to what is the CNAP or whatever a new acronym that comes out tomorrow. Thank you so much for supporting, listening, and watching. I'll see you next time.